You booked it, episode 117. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainment professionals 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to have a successful entertainment career. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainment professionals. We're here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community, where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app, where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating, and review. And now, let's do this. All right, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Benjamin Simpson. Are you ready for this, Ben?
I'm so ready.
All right. Ben is the co-founder of Fourth Wall Theatricals, a theatrical firm that specializes in producing general management, dynamic ticket pricing, and group sales. As a theatrical producer, Benjamin has won 2 Tony Awards for his co-producing work on The Band's Visit and Hello, Dolly. Other notable credits include Waitress, the Broadway and national tour, which received a Tony nomination, Oh Hello on Broadway, The Glass Menagerie, A Doll's House Part 2, which received a Tony nomination, Meteor Shower, Be More Chill, and Seawall A Life. Most recently, he lead produced Our Dear Dead Drug Lord by Alexis Shear, and Oscar at The Crown. He sits on the Young Professionals Board of Collab Theatrical Group and is a proud graduate of the Boston Conservatory. Ben, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry?
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben. I'm from Connecticut, about an hour outside of New York City. And that's actually where I have been since March when Broadway shut down. But under normal circumstances, I live in New York City and I miss it dearly. So, as Dane said, I'm one of 3 owners of Fourth Wall Theatricals. It's a company I started with Joe Longthorne, who I went to college with, and Nathan Vernon, who is also in the theater producing world. And we focus on those 4 different things: producing, general management, dynamic ticket pricing, which is similar to the airlines and the hotels where you see these prices go up and down. So that I do for specific Broadway shows where the ticket pricing will fluctuate, and then group sales, so bringing groups to Broadway. So obviously a lot of that is on hold at the moment, but that is primarily what our focus is. I started off as a performer. So I went to Boston Conservatory and I graduated back in 2011. And I always loved performing. I performed a few years after college. And that's when I discovered this whole world to producing and general management, and really fell in love with the business of Broadway. So that's primarily where I've been the past, since 2014, I would say. And then in between there, I had a kind of crazy little side curve and was working for SoulCycle, actually, both in New York City and Connecticut. And it's funny enough that it comes full circle, because actually I met a lot of my investors actually at SoulCycle. They were spinning and spending $40 a class, and I was like, do you like Broadway? Maybe you should come enter the world of Broadway. That's just a funny way. So I basically went from actor to SoulCycle to now producing on Broadway, which is wild.
Yeah, that is such a crazy story. Can you delve into that transition and how that happened starting your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in, what year was it? It was around 2013, 2014. I was doing that hustle of waiting tables and then booking a cool gig. And I was like, oh my God, I've made it. And then I'd have to go back to waiting tables. And that for me, I didn't have that hustle of wanting to do it. So I wanted to do something creative. And I thought I wanted to be a director, actually, because in college, senior year, you can pick an emphasis. And I directed. which I fell in love with. But it turns out now, looking at it years later, you actually were producing and directing because you had to get the budget for the show, cast the show, market the show with your the artwork and everything. So the long and short of it is I basically went from performing to, oh, I think I want to be a director. So I directed a reading of this new musical that was being developed by a mentor of mine from Connecticut. And putting that together, the New York Musical Theater Festival, which actually doesn't exist anymore, but a representative came to see it and they were like, we want that show to be in the festival. And we don't think you should be the director since you haven't professionally directed and you have to tech the show in 8 hours. And,
Right.
but you should be the producer and general manager and essentially find the money, make it happen. And I was kind of like, okay, I guess we'll see where that goes. So the really long and short of it is that's actually where I got my start, and seeing that experience happen, which I'm sure we'll get into a little later, that launched me into, oh my God, there's this whole world of raising money for shows and doing the day-to-day business, which we actually didn't really learn much of in college. Of, oh, there's people in the office that are doing the payroll and coming up with the advertising and the poster design and making sure your show can run day to day. So once I discovered that world, I was like, I need to do this. It took years of, I actually quit my job at Soul Cycle to be an intern. And, I'd saved up all that money. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do it. But
Right.
I did that, and that by intern at the 321 Theatrical Management, which they general manage some of the biggest shows on Broadway, like Wicked. And that's where I met all these key players and people and really was under their wings. So that internship went on for about a year, and then I got a full-time job there. And then after a few years, I started a company with Joe, which was Simpson and Longthorn Theatricals. And we just went out and did it on our own. And we just started getting clients and clients, and then finally merged with Nathan to create this new company, actually right back in December, January of this year.
Oh, that is such a great journey. So good. And let's move on to this next section here. And Ben, look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with everyone?
A friend actually introduced me this quote just a few months ago, and it's really resonated with me and something I've really dived into in quarantine. But it's a Jennifer Lewis quote, and she says, "The elevator to success is broken. Take the stairs." And I really let that sit, and I was like, it's so true. Like, to come up with any kind of success, you really have to hustle and make it happen.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and you stop off at a few other floors, don't you?
Yeah, you take those breathers for sure.
Yeah, that is such a good image. I really like that quote.
Thanks.
And let's move on to this section here. And Ben, of course, you are an entertainment professional. I am an entertainment professional, and I think that you would agree that this industry can be one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, there's an outrageous amount of fun and excitement doing what we do, there are also our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures we are going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
It actually goes back to those days of being a performer. My friends and I would joke my special skill was, I was the king of final callbacks. It's, going back all the way to freshman year of college. I had just moved into the dorms and then randomly was getting callback after callback for all these shows in New York City that I would go take the Amtrak to go do. And that was kind of my trajectory for my whole performing career. I would book some gigs in a TV show here, or like a summer stock here, but I never got that great contract that you close your eyes and dream of. And so it wasn't this one ultimate failure. There was that unevenness that really led me to my desire for stability for a career in the theater. And I always go back to this, college professors would say, I don't know if you remember, but they would always joke and be like, if you can see yourself doing anything other than performing, do that thing. And I was one of those people that loved performing and definitely wanted to be on Broadway as a performer, but there were so many other parts of the field that I discovered in college, especially senior year in that directing project, that I was like, I can see myself doing other things. So I think
Yeah.
those failures, if you will, of never booking that Broadway contract really helped me prioritize what I want in my life. And I am so happy now that I discovered this world. And I think those failures obviously led me to where I am now.
Yes. I am so happy that you're on this show and that you're sharing this journey and your journey because it's so important for people to hear. Because most of us, when we come into this industry, are performers. We're on the stage
Right.
side of things. We're singing and dancing. That's what we want to do. We want to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
But there is such a world in this industry that we just don't know about. Many of us are never exposed to it, and it takes many people, even super late into their careers, that these things even exist until you're actually doing, say, that equity contract, and you're like, oh, why are all these people in the office after the show? What are they writing?
Right.
All those show
Right.
reports? What's that for?
Yeah.
All of these things that you never think about, but it's so important to know about because there are so many other places where maybe that's your calling. Maybe that's where you're fulfilled. And just shedding some light on this is so brilliant. I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think there's some colleagues of mine that they are producers, but they still want to actually be directors, or
Mm,
they want to still perform. And I don't think it has to be all or nothing. I would say for me, I really fell in love with this and fell out of love with performing once I like had this light bulb moment. But I do think even aspiring performers that want to dip their toes into other things in the fields, it's just going to make you a better business person. And now all my actor friends, because we all graduated with a musical theater degree, I'm like, you better call me before you have your agent negotiate this contract because I'm going to help you. And this is what they're going to try and stiff you on, and this is what they're going to try and do. It's like you learning some of those business things. You can still be a performer, and I think it will help you.
yeah, for sure. And I'm personally a living testament of that because I still perform, I still do loads of things, but I've also ventured into the stage management, the production side, and then the corporate production side of things as well. So I'm
Yeah,
still in all the worlds, and I find each one personally to be very fulfilling in a slightly different way. And they work different parts of my brain, different parts of my creativity, and I find it very fulfilling. So you're right, you can
totally.
do multiple parts of this industry.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Brilliant. And let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living, or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing in the entertainment industry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that show at NYMF, that New York Musical Theater Festival show, because it was my first time experience this whole other world. And because that opportunity really came from me just being bored on my couch in my New York City apartment, turned to my roommate being like, I need to do something creative. I can't just keep waiting tables and auditioning. And once I was diving into this world where you signed all these contracts saying, yep, you're going to raise the money for the show and you're going to make this thing happen, when I had no idea what I was doing at the time, they give you this handbook that's this is how you do everything.
Mm,
I suddenly came into this world where, again, mentors of mine in college, when they were, telling me about other careers in the field. And I was like, I thought after graduating, maybe I wanted to either be that director, like I was talking about, or be an agent or a casting director because I loved actors and I loved the business side. And once I saw that I was putting together this full show, I was like, oh my God, a producer actually does everything, not in an egotistical way, but in like you get to sit in those final callbacks. And then an aha moment was the casting director, a really established casting director, turned to me and was like, who do you want? And I turned to the director and was like, who do you want? But the director was like looking at me of, oh wow, you get to be in the casting and you get to, be in tech and see the thing come to life. And I think you learn how to market a show and how to get people to come see the show. So all of that, once I got to do all of that, I was like, oh wait, I don't have to pick this producing trajectory. You get to do it all essentially. And that was like, oh my God, this is what I have to do.
oh, that sounds like so much fun. And I want to piggyback on that real quick and talk
Yeah.
about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it, But what was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Yeah, one that comes right to mind, it was just recently, it was about a year ago, was Joe and we'd done a lot of this co-producing, which if listeners aren't familiar, we find a property or attach ourselves to a property that usually has established lead producers. So like we'll use Waitress, for example. There's lead producers that really had seen the movie and was like, this needs to be a Broadway show. And then they hire Sarah Bareilles to compose it and really have it all come together. And a co-producer will come on board usually a few months, a year before it comes to Broadway to help raise the money for the show by finding other investors and everything, and then be in ad meetings and be helpful to the producing team, but you're not running the day to day. So about a year or two ago, Joe and I were ready to take that leap from co-producing to lead producing. And someone we went to college with, Alexis Shear, so she's another perfect example of went to school for performing but turns out to be this brilliant playwright, had sent us this show that she had written. And of course we get all these scripts in our inbox, and I'm such a bad reader, except now I have the time to do that. And we fell in love with her play and we're like, we need to produce this somehow. So we decided like, we're going to make this be our lead producing debut, if you will. So to make a really long story short, other people fell in love with the show as well, including some major nonprofits. So both the Women's Project and Second Stage in New York City wanted to produce it. So we came on board as the enhancing producers, which means we helped pay for their nonprofit productions and then in return would get the rights to commercially produce the show. So that happens a lot. If you think back to Next to Normal at Second Stage and Dear Evan Hansen, there were secret, if you will, enhancing producers that when the show took off Broadway, they moved it to Broadway and then it became this big commercial endeavor.
Yeah.
So that was a little backstory of, so we were doing that with our Dear Dead Drug Lord, and it only could have a 6-week run. That's like what these nonprofits do for a straight play by a debut playwright. And the show just started to take off in a way. I mean, in our wildest dreams, I think it's why we love and fell in love with the show. But ticket sales started off really strong, and then it got a rave in the New York Times. And by the time all of this buzz and things were happening for the show, it was basically time for it to close. And Joe and I were like, wait, we're not ready for this to be over yet. So we were racking our brains super quickly. It's a really quirky play that we knew wasn't necessarily at the time a Broadway show, but we wanted it to live off Broadway. And all the stars aligned where the theater it was playing in on the Upper West Side was actually available for another 9 weeks. There was no show immediately coming in. So it was this day or two of Joe and I literally trying to put together budgets of what would it cost every week for us to do this and to capitalize and find investors that would do this crazy idea, see if the cast and crew and everyone was in the building was even available to stay another 9 weeks,
Right.
hire our own press and advertising, things that take 3 to 6 months that you do in pre-production before a show goes on sale. We had to decide basically in 2 to 3 days if we
Oh,
could do
wow.
it. So it was the craziest time of our young careers and our first lead producing thing. And we just knew we had to do it. And it just came together. And I think fast forwarding to when we finally did have to get kicked out of the theater 9 weeks later, and our closing performance was in a holiday week and it was sold out and people crying because they couldn't get in to see it. It was like, holy moly, like all that hard work and sleepless nights of, oh my God, how are we going to ever make this happen? Was just so worth it. And I was like, yep, this is what I have to do.
Ah, such a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And it's a weird time, right? We're amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're doing this interview in September and not in April or May, back when I was in my little deep hole of, oh my God, what is going to happen? Things were so bleak, and not that they're all bright and shiny now, but I think at first, all these projects we were in the middle of, I mean, we do these 4 different things in our business and all 4 departments just shut off, right? Like I
Of
was
course.
pricing, I was like coming up with prices and changing them every minute for all these clients that had performances that night. Nathan was running our group sales department. We had all these groups coming in to see these Broadway shows. Joe was pre-production for all these summer festival shows that were going to happen. And producing while we were working on all these new projects, and suddenly it just all went away that March 12th doom day. But so after taking it took a month or two of damage control and figuring out what was happening in all those departments, and then really having to embrace, as I take a big sigh because I'm learning to embrace that theater has totally gone digital and streaming and Zoom theater. And I think it was a little exhaustive, at least for me at first. It was like that the first few months, it was like, oh my God, I'm really going to sit on the couch and watch another person sing a song on their couch. And I just miss being with people and feeling that energy of live theater, to having to kind of switch my mentality to be like, let's use this as a positive. The theater business model is so hard for you listeners. Like 1 out of 4 or 5 Broadway shows will be profitable and just make the money back. And then so you're looking at 75% of shows being financial failures, to being like, wait, if these streaming companies like Hamilton on Disney Plus and now Diana is going to be on Netflix, if there's ways for these big players to be excited about what we do on Broadway, we have to really lean into that and see what other cool opportunities and collaboration can come of these crazy times. So, over the past month or two, these projects that were on hold are starting to redevelop, just so we don't lose a year of creativity, which for me was another light bulb of, wait, we can't just mope that we're not going to see live theater probably for many more months. Like, I look at how crazy life was, and we couldn't dive into those scripts and go listen to that unknown composer's new music, and now we can. So I think what we're going to see is hopefully a burst of new material that comes, whether it is digitally or there's some new way to showcase it, or it's like being developed secretly, and then when we can return live to those rehearsal studios and rehearse with everyone, like there'll be a lot of readings and labs and things of all this material that has came from these crazy times. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. So the new projects Joe and I are working on, we're just waiting now. We're working with the writers and everything, but also want to make sure that we can come back better than ever.
For sure. That's great insight. And I like how you said we can't just lose a year of creativity. It's time to, I guess at first no one knew what was going on. So
Right.
you're like, let it be shut down. We'll just put it on pause. But like you said, it might be many more months before we get to go back into our theaters, that you got to keep moving forward. You go, all right, let's dust this thing off real quick and see what we can make happen in this crazy world that we now exist in.
Yeah, I joke with my roommate Mike. I feel like on that when Broadway shut down, I was burnt out already. I was like, okay, I'm going to Connecticut for 2 weeks. I packed for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my God, and then even in the industry, we just kept, I feel like in the Broadway world, people love to just make dates up sometimes. So it was like, oh, we shut down in March, but we'll definitely be back by Memorial Day in May. And that felt like the craziest thing ever because it was 2 weeks, and then it was like after July 4th, because then it'll be, and then it was Labor Day, and just a few weeks ago, I got all these texts that I cannot believe it's after Labor Day. We'd be at Glass House Tavern having a cocktail, so stressed out about the fall theater season, and the Tonys being, you kind of looked over in June. There were all these kind of milestones that I was just like, oh my God, the world is just going on, and this whole field is just so stuck.
Yeah, it is a crazy new world that we live in, but we keep moving forward and let's see what it brings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, people are going to really lean into what positives there are. I think there's all these archaic rules with certain unions that don't make sense for anyone, the talent, the produce. So all these things, hopefully now we can really go back and negotiate and be like, why, what, and question things like, why isn't there more diversity on Broadway? Why do the few people hold all the power? How can we cultivate new talent across all jobs? And I think now we get some wiggle room to do all of that.
Yeah, for sure. And it is time to move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round.
Cool.
I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Nothing. I had to do it. I think any other job I had that I went into was just a stepping stone to where I was, but I was the kid singing in the family room, Annie and Oliver, and I had such supportive parents. My sister went to college for the arts too, but they cheered me on every step of the way, but I can't do anything else. I can't.
Fantastic. Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
I was an intern and I was complaining about someone reaching out for some coffee meeting or something. And my mentor said, take every meeting. So if I can say that in caps, take every meeting, you just never know what could come out of it.
For sure. And the third question, what is something that is working for you right now? Or if you'd like to go pre-COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
For the first time in years, it sounds so silly and cliche, but a work-life balance. And I think that's partially because the work has substantially slowed down. But pre-COVID, it was nonstop. We worked all day and then we went to our cocktail meeting and then we were at a show. And every single day, there was a dot on the calendar of, oh my God, I don't get to go home and just do nothing. And I think in
Right.
quarantine, my family is nearby, so I get to see them and catch up on all these television shows people told me for years to watch. I watched the Emmys last night. I was like, oh my God, I've seen these shows, which never used to happen. So I think going back, I'm hopefully going to incorporate a lot of this. So I would say the work-life balance for sure.
For sure. And the fourth question, what is your best resource? Whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast, maybe a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now.
Oh, a few things. The most broad in general is go see live theater, go to those concerts, at 54 Below in the green room and up and coming musical theater writers and plays. That's your research and where you're really going to, learn your taste about, oh, I love that. I don't like that. Who is that person? I should know that person. Just like seeing anything. And then even back to high school, I read the Broadway grosses on Playbill, which is every week when shows are running, they post how much money they made, what the capacity was, what the average ticket price was. And that's where I started to learn, oh, that's why that show's closing. Sometimes people will be like, why is that show closed? It's because it wasn't making any money. So
Right.
you might not understand all the numbers and things on the page, but you'll really learn and get a sense of, oh, that show's making a lot of money. What are they doing? Who's that producer? So I would say read the Broadway grosses. And then my favorite, nice little plug, it's called the Broadway Briefing, which is a daily e-newsletter that comes right in your mail, and it sums up all the happenings on Broadway from all the various news sites, whether it's national or like really just happening in the niche Broadway community. If you're familiar with the Skim, it's like that, but it's Broadway-fied. It's awesome.
Very cool. And the fifth question, if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently, or would you keep it the same?
I'd keep it the same. I don't really have any regrets, which is like wild to say out loud, but I think my journey to where I am now might have been a little delayed, that I was a performer and then I did this little corporate job, but then I went to interning at this big office, but I was an older intern, if you will, not just right out of school, but I had some more life experience and knew that like I was going to sort the mail, but I was going to read every piece of mail instead of rolling my eyes. So I think all of this stuff actually came together in a beautiful way. So I don't think I'd change anything.
Great. And the last question, what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Trust the heart and not the head, which it was a huge learning opportunity for Joe and I, especially when we were deciding early on what shows to co-produce and what shows not to. The shows that looked good on paper, meaning, oh, they had A-list celebrities and they're going to sell out, turned out to not be financially successful because they weren't very good. And we knew that going in, but we were inspired to do it based on the wrong reasons, versus anytime we fell in love with a material piece that was risky and was like, oh, is anyone going to come see this? Or how are we ever going to raise money for this weird thing? They all ended up working out. And it was that gut feeling of, oh my God, it's making us laugh or it's making us cry. And we have to be involved and just hope it works out. So definitely trusting the heart and not the head has really steered us on the path that we're on.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Of
And
course.
to wrap up this interview, Ben, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
I'm on Instagram, the Ben Simpson. That's mostly just me and my dog and my nephew and all the shows I'm currently working on. But that's a great way to connect. Yeah, so message me there and we'll have some kind of meeting of the minds.
Brilliant. And for everyone listening out there, I have put the link to Ben's Instagram in the description of this episode so you can easily connect with him. Ben, it has been such a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.